Hello and welcome to the Holy Hour, the bi-weekly all-cure podcast. I'm Gavin, and welcome to the show. I hope everybody's doing good, and we got a wonderful show for you today. It's a slightly different one. I'll be flying solo here, as I'm going to be kind of walking you through a little bit of history, a little bit of commentary, a little bit of research, if you will. We usually tend to stay away from the telling the cure story kind of approach because, you know, there are books out there and, you know, we're not their biographers. We're just here to have conversations about the cure. But, you know, sometimes it is fun just to kind of pick apart something that normally wouldn't pop up in conversation when relating to cure talk. And that topic today is labels.
But you're a man. Labels.
They're record labels that they've been on, and there haven't been many. As we all know, they've basically stuck with fiction records for the bulk of their career, and not until the last couple albums did they steer away from that. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of scrape into there. I had this idea a while back of kind of just doing a fiction-focused one and digging up other bands on fiction, which would be cool, but there really aren't even too many of those that we haven't mentioned in passing and everyone's pretty clear on. But they come up again, and I thought it'd be fun just to kind of walk through how the Cure got signed and what happened at each stage of these labels. And, you know, did it all work out for the best? Could it have been better? Or was everything destiny paved in gold for the Cure? So, yeah, it's every musician's dream, right?
Tracy, prepare the standard rich and famous contract for Kermit the Frog and Company.
And as soon as you get signed, you made it, man, right? Isn't that how it works? Not always. So we will get into the nitty-gritty of what happened with the Cure and maybe a little even speculation on where they're going now. Are they even on a label? Who knows? So we'll get into all that. Stick around. We're going to kick things off first with a quick shout out to our Patreon crew. All right, and helping me out this time is our dear friend Henson. How's it going, buddy?
Good.
You gonna read off some Patreon names with me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, what do we got? Who do we need to thank?
Nemesio.
Mm-hmm.
Donna. Craig. Jeff Hilton. Jeff Jones. Suzanne. John. Ben. Allison. Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Dione A.
Uh-huh.
Scott.
And then we got Scott. You remember Scott? He hosts the Sarlacc Digest, the one and only best Star Wars podcast in the galaxy, right? What day is that on? You remember? You listened to the last episode with me when you weren't feeling well. Sort of listened. It's on Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific time. So it's a little later here on the East Coast, but it's worth it. You could stay up late and listen to that, don't you think?
Yeah.
Not every time.
Maybe.
So Pacific time, 8 p.m. Wednesdays, you catch it live on YouTube. And if you want to catch the old episodes, you just listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which show's coming up? What are they talking about?
The Obi-Wans.
Yeah, they're counting down the days. You excited for that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Cool, me too. Who else we got?
Lisa?
Mm-hmm. Lisa's up in Canada. You want to go to Canada sometime?
Totally.
All right, let's do it. Let's go to Calgary, and we'll go to this bar named Dickens. You want to go to the bar with me?
No.
Dickens is in Calgary, Canada. They have a wide range of live shows and events that they are back hosting in person. Go to dickensyyc.com. You can get the full list of all kinds of things coming up. And everything from dance party nights to trivia nights to live shows with bands rocking out. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
And keep your eyes and ears peeled on Twitch, too, because Dickens YYC also does live streaming on there for all of us that are not in the neighborhood. And who else we got to thank?
Kate.
Kate. Good old Kate. And you wore Kate's Love Cats t-shirt for your school pictures yesterday, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So Kate is in charge of CureThreads.com. If you're not familiar, go over to CureThreads.com where you can find original Cure-inspired designs and products over there. You can get everything from that Love Cats print on a mug to a tote bag, all kinds of stuff. Like the artwork you have hanging in your room for Caterpillar. She designed all that stuff. Can you believe it?
No.
No, it's amazing.
But
Pretty cool. So you can check all that out, CureThreads.com. Hopefully gonna have Kate on soon, as well as our final one that we'd like to thank. Matt, yeah, and he would just like you to remind yourself that donating blood is a good idea and helps people out a lot. We got a cat crawling on the back of this chair. And yeah, you can do that through the Red Cross Blood Donor app. It's free, easy to use, helps you schedule an appointment to go donate blood, and it helps you track it too. Like after you've donated your blood, you can see where it went and when they're giving it to somebody, I think. So pretty cool. You ready to do it? So what are we gonna do? We're gonna donate some blood.
no.
We're gonna go to the bar in Canada.
I'm not
And we're
doing
gonna
that.
buy some clothes with Cure stuff on them, and we're gonna listen to some Star Wars. Sound good? Worst parent ever?
No, but it's a weird idea.
All right.
Maybe
we gotta show our
maybe
support.
Maybe not the blood donating.
Everything but
part.
the blood donating?
Yeah, everything but the blood donating.
Fair enough. All right, Henson, you ready for the new Cure album or what?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Yeah, we're gonna do a special episode for Robert's birthday, aren't you? Live stream, so keep your eyes peeled. Instagram live stream. Robert Smith's birthday, 21st. I don't know what day of the week it's on this year. All right, you're ripping my notebook apart.
It's not.
You're making a mess. You're ruining the show and you're making a mess. All right, say goodbye to these people.
Bye.
To begin with, you know, it never really seemed like The Cure had too much trouble getting attention from an audience or a record label for that matter. You know, in all the books, it seems like a pretty quick progression of them starting to play as a band. They didn't even really have the name settled out before they were already getting a record contract. So it's pretty easy to just jump right into this topic. They're just, you know, some kids sitting around like everybody else starting to record shitty little demos in a cassette recorder and sending them off to anybody that they could find an address for. The first stroke of luck, if you could call it that, was from Hansa Records. Yeah, Hansa Records, April 77, put an ad in a magazine, and the Easy Cure stumbled across it, and it was a German label, and the ad had these sexy babes on there, and it said, "Wanna be a recording star? Get your ass up, take your chances." And there's a great image of it in the 10 Imaginary Years book. We'll post it on the Facebook page if you're not familiar, but it's a good one. So they said, yeah, we'll take our chances, and they recorded a crappy little tape recorder recording of Killing an Arab and 10:15 Saturday night into their tape recorder and submitted it. Peter O'Toole, no relation to the actor, as we all know, was still on vocals at this time. So I'm not sure if they just did it without him or if he was actually singing that. So it's something that never gets brought up, or if that's just something in the timeline that gets mixed up in all the different biographies throughout the years. But he's technically still their singer at this point, so that'd be pretty cool to hear him singing Killing an Arab or 10:15. Anyway, almost instantly they hear back from Hansa Records, probably because they're the only one that submitted it to that, but who knows. And they set up an audition at Morgan Studios, which would come up again in The Cure's lifetime. Hansa Record representatives were impressed, to say the least, and 5 days later offered the Easy Cure a 5-year, 1,000-pound contract. So, things are looking good for Robert and company. By mid-October of that year, Peter's already out the door at this point, so Robert is now the official lead vocalist. They went to Sound and Vision Studios in London to record a 5-song demo for Hansa. And they did songs like Pillbox Tales, I Just Need Myself, I Want to Be Old, Meat Hook, and See the Children. Yeah, all those early classics. Hansa representatives this time were not so impressed and started pressuring the band to record, some fun covers or something instead, like I Fought the Law or Great Airplane Disaster. Robert says, no thanks. And about a month later, came back to record some more songs. They did Cold and another version of Killing an Arab, along with I Saw Her Standing There, Little Girl, and Rebel Rebel. But now no one's really happy. Hansa didn't really dig the originals, and The Cure was not digging these covers by any means. It was getting worse quickly, very quickly. And Hansa had this idea that they really wanted to market the Easy Cure as like a teeny bopper band based on their image, and offered them songs that were planned for a group, like a teeny bopper group named Child, and they were really pushing that band overseas, but they were like, well, we got these songs, we were saving them for Child, but we'll give them to you. And obviously Robert also shot that idea down really quick. So they decided to give the studio sessions one more try. In January now, 1978, they head to PSL Studios, and with a fancy pants music producer named Trevor Vallis, they played 3 original songs and a cover. They did I Just Need Myself, Plastic Passion, and Smashed Up, which I'm not sure which that one is. Maybe one of those old bootlegs or something. And Rebel Rebel, they did. Still, no one was happy. So a few weeks later, Hansa Records would decline to put Killing an Arab out as a single, and the contract was dissolved. And somehow, Robert, already showing that he's a savvy businessman, was able to get out of the contract pretty much unscathed, and even was able to keep the advance that they got. Luckily, they must have just wanted to get Robert and the Easy Cure out of the door as soon as possible by that point. So other than the experience with dealing with the record business, some fairly rough demos were recorded. They got some studio time. But the only real positive thing that came out of the experience with Hansa Records was that they were inspired to write the wonderful classic Cure song, To the Hansa. So as the laughter died down, the Cure found themselves once again without a label, though, back where every band is when they first start. But they didn't seem too distraught by it or beat down. It gave them a chance to reboot. In July 1978, they see the first departure of guitarist Pearl Thompson, and would also lose the Easy in their name, and become simply The Cure. This time, financed by their new friend, Simon Gallup's older brother, Rick, they did book studio time again at Chestnut Studios in Sussex, and they do a new demo to send out to record labels. 10:15 Saturday night, Boys Don't Cry, It's Not You, and Fire in Cairo would be recorded for this demo tape. A stronger batch of songs indeed. You would think any tape with Boys Don't Cry on it would pretty much be a guaranteed instant response from a record label, but just proving how wonderful most record labels are, The Cure still got plenty of rejections. But they would send out this demo with a letter that read, "Hello, we are The Cure. Lowell, 19, drums. Mick, 19, bass. Robert, 19, guitar/vocals. We have no commitments. We would like a recording contract. Listen to the tape. If you're interested, please contact us at the above. Please return the tape in the self-addressed stamp envelope enclosed. Thank you, Robert, The Cure. So, definitely not the long-winded music bios that most bands are forced to write and send off with their tapes. Back in the day, straightforward, gotta respect that. I've copied that letter many times myself. It didn't work for me. But when you got songs like Boys Don't Cry on there, I guess you don't really need to say a lot in your letter. But like I said, surprisingly, pretty much everyone that they sent it out to turned it down, sent it back. And all until that one day, this one man heard something he liked.
And I'm crying for yesterday. And then tap trips.
Further proving how weird destiny can be, it wasn't Boys Don't Cry that caught Chris Perry's ear. It was the drip, drip, drip of 1015. Enter Chris Perry, a New Zealander and a drummer for the band Formula, and also happened to be working A&R at Polydor Records. In 1976, he's credited in trying to sign the Sex Pistols and the Clash, but Polydor wasn't sold on them and said, nah, maybe not this time. Whoops. So perhaps that's the reason why they listened a little closer once he successfully locked down deals with the Jam and Susie and the Banshees. Heard of them? Yeah. So he's riding this kind of high when the Cure's tape made its way across his desk there. And around this time anyway, he was starting to concoct a plan to form his own label that would be an imprint of Polydor. And when that Cure tape arrived just in time, and songs like 1015, Boys Don't Cry, Perry's ideas and wheels started turning. He was hooked. So he contacted Robert with a letter that read, Dear Robert Smith, I would like to meet the group and suggest that you telephone my secretary, Alison Kushner, who will arrange a meeting. Yours sincerely, Chris Perry, Polydor Records. And they hit it off pretty much instantly. Robert liked that he didn't seem to take himself too seriously, but was impressed by his passion for the job. Perry also liked Robert because he was super smart and just weird enough to be interesting. So just as Robert and company are about to sign with Polydor, a world-famous recording label, Perry throws the idea of Fiction at them. The Cure are a bit surprised and even a little disappointed, you could say, because they really had their hearts set on Polydor. But Perry's starting to sweeten the deal, if you will, in the talk, saying, look, I could still sign you to Polydor, but you're going to be one of a whole bunch of big acts over there. You're not going to get the attention and love that you need as an artist. If we do this idea with Fiction, the label will be centered on the Cure, and you will have all the artistic freedom you need. And Robert liked that idea a lot and held it to him. As we know, looking ahead on Fiction Records and the Cure's career on Fiction, is that Robert definitely put him to the test on the artistic freedom front. And so yeah, instantly Robert clung to that idea, liked the idea, and took the deal. So on August 27th in Red Hill, the band played a gig for an audience, but also for Chris Perry to seal the deal, if you will. He wanted to make sure they could play live. And of course, he loved what he saw. Only 2 weeks later, offered them a 6-month deal with Fiction, which actually sounds kind of short and shitty, but I'm assuming it just kept continuing on like a subscription after that. Like those 90-day evaluation periods when you get like a normal job or something like that. So maybe it was along those lines. But clearly, they would keep rolling with Fiction. And it would prove to be The Cure's home from 1978 all the way to the year 2000. So, only 1 week after the papers were signed, Perry sent the band to Morgan Studios to record. Again, Morgan Studios, and again to record a lot of these songs. Killing an Arab. Good Lord, there's so many early recordings of that song at this point. And 1015. And Fire in Cairo. Plastic Passion. This time, Three Imaginary Boys is thrown into the mix. They're locking all these down for what I'm assuming would end up being the versions that are on Three Imaginary Boys, the album. Perry would also start putting tours together for the band and getting them on the road for that brief period that we talked about as an opener. Pretty much the only time that they would be a support band in their career, it seemed like, other than festivals. So yeah, opening for Gen X until Lowell pissed on Billy Idol's boot, of course. Opened for Wire, and of course Susie and the Banshees, where Robert would take up guitar duties even. By October, Perry would have them record the rest of the tracks at Morgan Studios for Three Imaginary Boys, the album. Mike Hedges would be engineering, and Perry would be producing. Lowell recently talks about this period in cool detail on the first episode of the Curious Creatures podcast with Budgie, Season 2. So go check that out if you haven't yet, because he talks about Chris Perry and Robert's dynamic and in the studio there. So this would be one of the few real documented clashes, because the dynamic wouldn't prove to be the best fit as far as producer and artist. But quickly, after this first album, Robert convinced Perry by 17 Seconds that they would be able to make better albums on his own and with another producer. And remarkably, the first testament to Perry again that he agreed and kind of let them take the reins with a producer aside from himself, already backing up that promise of artistic freedom. And, Perry wouldn't just kind of drift off and sign checks at this point for the rest of the career. He was really involved and proved to be a trustworthy manager and label head and just a voice of reason that Robert could turn to, which he often did. Crazy how many times you could see that Robert would bounce ideas off of Perry and really respect his input. And in fact, when he gave the acceptance speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019, Chris Perry was the only non-member that he thanked, actually. Not to call Robert out, but he didn't even thank Dave Allen or Mary. So I'm sure they had worked out everything else in advance, so hopefully he didn't get in any hot water over that. But at the same time, I guess if he's thanking members straight up just of the Cure and of the band, he can't do that without including Chris Perry and laying down this path for them to travel on. So all those weird shifts throughout the Cure that we've talked about, I think a huge credit has to go to Chris Perry and giving him, sticking true to his words and giving him that artistic freedom. From Three Imaginary Boys into 17 Seconds even was a subtle but clearly a sound shift. Of course, Pornography into the Let's Go to Bed single was perhaps the biggest contrast, even though it's always kind of documented that Perry was digging for the hit or whatever, and he's just making bets or fucking with each other, but at the same time, that was a really smart move on Perry's part, because Robert didn't want to put Let's Go to Bed out as a Cure single. He wanted to put it on a different name, and Perry was the one that convinced him, nobody's going to buy that shit unless it's got the Cure name on it. And it proved to be genius, because that opened up the doors for them to just do whatever sound that the Cure wanted, because they pulled it off. So at that point, any shift didn't seem too drastic. But going from Pornography to Let's Go to Bed, that's pretty good artistic freedom with your label there. So following that, immediately, he's also able to record with the Glove, even though there were some contractual bullshit there with him not being able to sing. At the same time, that's going to happen anywhere, if not worse. Also be a member of Susie and the Banshees. It's technically a pretty short string of time, but you could see how if the whole label was depending on the Cure, Perry would be a little bit weary of letting him join another band, but let him do it. Followed that up with the shift of Love Cats even into Top is slightly odd when you have these super fun, goofy singles, and then you kind of get a little more weird and dark on the top. The pop success of Kiss Me into Disintegration normally would be considered career suicide, and a label would freak out over that. Following your biggest album, Disintegration, with an electronic remixes album is even borderline insane, but Perry let it go. Let Robert do his thing, and it kept proving to be worthwhile. Wild mood swings in general. I mean, by that point, I guess you gotta just let Robert call the shots. But yeah, they let him do that, and finally allowing him to round out the whole era with Fiction with an album like Blood Flowers. Who knows how tight or who had how much say by that point, but that's total artistic freedom in the sense that the album didn't even have any singles. It was recorded with the idea of not having singles. So every record label loves that concept, right? This is the concept album that does not have singles. Okay, cool. So you can see, despite whatever friction at Fiction may have been, Robert would have been crazy to leave before 2000. Without Chris Perry and Fiction, it's pretty safe to say that we never could have had the diversity in Robert or the Cure's body of work. So Fiction really did prove to be the ideal home for any artist, and in particular, somebody like Robert Smith. During those years of cranking out pure fucking gold for Fiction, Perry did also sign a few other bands. The Associates with Billy McKenzie, as we're all familiar with, a band called Purple Hearts. The Passions, who we briefly talked about in the support acts, opening acts episode, would be other ones. And then there was a few others, I think, that floated in and out at various times. But really, it was always the main focus. Stayed with the Cure. When you got the Cure, you don't really need to add a bunch of extra bands to it. So it basically just became a label for the Cure. All right, as all great things come to an end, though, the Cure parted ways with Fiction in 2000 after Blood Flowers, when Chris Perry sold the label to Universal. It sounds like this was kind of in the works for a while. Lowell has mentioned it in a few interviews and in episodes, I believe, of his podcast and in his book that Robert vented to him, maybe even, because I'm not sure how else he would know at that point. But it seemed like it was kind of the inevitable end as Chris Perry looked to retire. And, it was kind of the fuel that Robert needed to leave Fiction officially. Didn't ever seem like it was a consideration to stay with Fiction after Chris Perry sold it and have Universal take it over. So sadly, that's about where the road ends for Chris Perry and the Cure. Oddly, Universal didn't really do anything with Fiction initially, though. So I don't know if that had a part in why the Cure didn't stick with it even after selling it. They just kind of snagged it all up and sat there. So probably that might be why we don't have some of the old shit. I don't know. That might be the weird little speed bump as why stuff isn't getting re-released, or it's under some different kind of contract that they can't quite release out of. I don't know. They did decide to resurrect the label, though, 4 years later in 2004, which would have been when the Cure makes their next record anyway. But they put it out as like a sub-label of Universal for edgy bands. And a few cooler names did put out their early work under the name Fiction. Like Yeah Yeah Yeahs put out an early album under that. Crystal Castles, Snow Patrol's first couple were technically on Fiction. And Tame Impala may still be under it. In 2014, Fiction did officially break free from Polydor, who had actually been absorbed by Universal somewhere in the late 90s too. But oddly, Fiction is internationally distributed by Caroline Records now, who I believe put out, at least partnered in putting out Roger O'Donnell's solo album, Two Ravens. So if you really twist and turn through who owns what, Roger's still connected. So like most label talk, once it gets to the 2000s, it's just super stupid and complicated, and everyone is owned by everyone, it seems. Even The Cure's most recent releases, Bestival, which was put out on Lost / Sunday Best / Pious Records, and the Curation and Anniversary box sets, which were put out on Eagle Rock Entertainment, are both technically owned by Universal still anyway. So really, did Robert leave the label? So when you switch in and it's still owned by a different thing under Universal, you're still kind of owned by Universal. I know it gets even more complicated as we forge ahead. Everybody's in the same bed with everybody, but instead of getting bogged down on how shitty labels are, maybe we should continue. The Greatest Hits album, which would really prove to be the actual last release on Fiction / Elektra Records, comes out in 2001, and I believe it might have been a contract filler anyway, so maybe that's, where Robert wanted to leave it. I don't know. The Cure did say back in 97 that The Cure's career would end with a Greatest Hits collection. So that added further fuel to the idea that Blood Flowers was the real end of The Cure. We got Blood Flowers, a very finale type album, leaving Fiction and putting out a Greatest Hits. If he was going to wrap it up, that was probably the spot, but luckily they didn't. They continued on. And now we get some new label talk. So as we continue, the story does not end there. 2004's self-titled album is released. We can't forget about the self-titled one. And for this album, Robert would sign The Cure to Geffen Records.
I can't find myself. I can't find myself.
Nice big major record label, like his initial dreams of Polydor, maybe. They even put out all the early Susie and the Banshees early stuff, so they got some cred. And don't worry, Geffen is owned by Interscope. But wait, isn't Interscope also owned by Universal? Oh, fuck. Anyway, the deal wasn't really with Geffen. Basically, finding a sweet little mini label under its umbrella, like Fiction, would be the idea, right? So, why not sign with his new buddy, Ross Robinson's label, I.M. Records? Yep, suddenly fucking Ross Robinson is the new Chris Perry. The Cure signed a 3-album deal with I.M. Records, which is basically just a mini label off of Geffen, so it's still run by Geffen. But Ross Robinson gets to call the shots for it, I suppose. I know I've been pretty clear about my dislike for Ross Robinson and everything he's produced, but this one still baffles me. And not only does he produce a Cure album, but also is, their record label. So I guess there's some divine intervention here, though, because I still can't figure out how they got out of the 3-album thing. They only put the one self-titled album out under I.M. Records. Maybe the poor sales of self-titled. Maybe Ross Robinson was cool and just realized that it wasn't the best fit after all and let him break out of it. Maybe Geffen didn't want Ross Robinson to have a label anymore and they had the power to just take it away. I don't know. The lineup changed. But most likely Robert was just smart enough to put some kind of fine print or loophole in the contract to allow for an escape pod and get the hell out of there if need be. Whatever the case, thank Christ. Or maybe it does continue. We don't really realize it. Because as we move ahead and away from the self-titled album with 413 Dream, it is still under Geffen. So maybe that's the second, if you're saying the 3-album deal is with Geffen proper. Well, technically it's under Sure Tone, actually, which is part of Geffen. It's just another subgroup owned by Interscope, which is also owned by Universal. So, on the surface, it looks like our boy Robert still knows how to sweet-talk the labels and get what he wants and get away from the Ross Robinson connection, but still be under Geffen for perhaps the second of 3 album deals. Or maybe this is a whole new thing at this point. But it's looking like Robert's still in control. He's got it. It takes 2.5 years to record 413 Dream. The vision is big for it. 33 songs, a double album. And perhaps by it being a double album, maybe that would mean that it's albums 2 and 3 of the 3-album deal. What do you think? That 414 Scream thing might have been like the 3rd album? Who knows? Well, whatever sweet talking Robert was doing, he was pulling it. It came to a grinding halt at this point. Gavin wasn't having his shit, and it wasn't flying like it did with Chris Perry back in the day. They shoot down the idea of the double album anyway, and tell Robert he's got to pick the best ones from both and put it out as one album. This really pissed off Robert. You could see in a couple interviews that the whole vision of the album was shot even before it got released, which kind of sucks. Might be the first time that he is officially cock-blocked by a record label and couldn't really do anything about it. So when you look at those 2 albums, there definitely were some questionable label-type choices. It's hard to say who deserves the full blame, as far as promotions even for those albums. They hit it pretty hard for the self-titled album. Got some videos, lots of talk shows and touring and stuff. But by 413 Dream, it's hard to say if that was Robert's idea or the label, but the whole release the one single a month until the album comes out thing. I mean, I loved it as a fan at the time because you get a new Cure song every month, but then by the time the album came out and you realized you already had the 4 singles, that puts a lot of pressure on the deep cuts, and that's pretty much a terrible idea. Even when they do that still on Spotify and Apple, where they gradually release stuff, and by the time the album's out, you've already heard 2/3 of it. So it must just be this digital age thing that I'm not merging into properly, but I don't know. That seems like some silly label shit there, but who knows? So where the fuck does The Cure go now as far as labels, and what is up with Songs for a Lost World? What's it going to be released on? Is he still under Geffen then? If 413 Dream was album 2 of the 3-album Geffen deal still, if we're taking that route, then there is still technically one album they owed them. Unless somehow they were able to convince that the Festival was it, or 414 was it, and they've scrapped that, so that got them out of the deal somehow. I'm assuming, like I said, Robert's smart enough at this point, he's not going to just get bogged down, but maybe that's why there's been a huge fucking delay, too. Maybe if you wait X amount of years, it negates the contract. He knew that maybe the band might just fall apart at that point, and cease to be, so maybe there was some kind of loophole in the contract that if he waits 10 years, then he's out of the contract and free to do whatever he wants with the next one. So maybe that even has some kind of idea of why there's been such a huge gap before the next album. Obviously now I think we know the last few years what's going on, but maybe even before they started recording this new album. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see where and how this next album comes out, if it ever comes out. And, even the idea of putting 2 albums out and a solo album, it's are you back into another 3-album deal? What's going on there? How are you going to get a label? I mean, but ultimately it's The Cure, so who the fuck is not going to put it out, even on some super one-off kind of deal. I'd be, especially after that resurgence in popularity that with them from around 2018 and 2019 with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the anniversary and the festivals tour when they were riding real high right before COVID. I could see a billion labels wanting to put out anything that he's doing. So I think there's no real trouble there, but I do worry that there isn't a label. And while we're getting all this, I got a few more songs to mix or a few more vocals where he could drop it himself any day now. It's not going to go that way if he's still got to sign a damn contract and let that all seep in. And then the record label's going to step in and be like, this album's too sad, we can't put this out, or some bullshit. So who knows? A little bit of concern, but more curiosity. So maybe I'm missing something. Like I said, I'm not the best at this legal stuff, and maybe the writing was on something that I missed already out there. But I don't think anybody in any of these interviews have asked him what the fuck label the band is even on at this point, or if he's going to put it out himself. But let's save a little bit more of that speculation for a conclusion. We do want to touch on a couple more things because, as we know, it isn't just Hansa Records and Fiction and Geffen. If anybody out there has been buying Cure albums over the year, you see quite a few different little labels on your records. And record collectors like our boy Chaz loves this because that means he's got to buy a whole nother copy of the album because it's technically different. And the most notable of that is the partnership with Elektra Records. Elektra Records would be the Cure's home throughout the Fiction years here in the U.S. So as a kid, and you asked me what label the Cure's on, it was always Elektra. I never really even thought much about the word Fiction on the side of the box there, on the side of the spine. It was always Elektra to me. So even when the Cure split from Fiction in 2001, they would also split with Elektra. I'm not really sure if that was all bundled together or what. I don't know why they couldn't have just gone with Elektra proper at that point. But Elektra Records in the U.S., the relationship seemed to be on par with Fiction. Everything that was allowed over there. I don't think there's too many documented cases of them totally demanding something completely different from what Fiction was putting out. A few weird examples of Elektra not quite giving the full freedom that Perry and Fiction did was like the Let's Go to Bed was used as the reissue single for Standing on a Beach versus the new voice Boys Don't Cry. So little weird things like that where they would just be like, nah, we don't want that as the B-side, or something weird like that. So that's where you get a lot of those kind of mix and match singles and stuff when you're collecting. They wanted Fascination Street to be the single for Disintegration, but also the lead-off single for the album, which odd, but at the same time, they went with it and were able to accommodate them. I don't believe it came out as a single at all in the UK, right? On Fiction. So there's probably no UK Fascination Street single on Fiction proper. Just here. Sure, there are other slight variations on Fiction versus Elektra over the year. And as you look through Discogs, that's, like I said, the fun part. You see some slightly different Japanese release. Even all the way through Geffen, self-titled. I think there's 20 different versions of the running order and whatever ways you get that. So that's where those kind of variations come. Elektra compilation, the Rubaiyat compilation thing. Remember when that came out in 1990? That was kind of just a compilation to celebrate Elektra's 40th anniversary, where the Cure recorded Hello, I Love You, 3 versions of it actually. And just interesting side note, he had wanted to do pirate ships for that. That's what he recorded the Wendy Waldman / Judy Collins, who was on Elektra, pirate ships. They did it during the Disintegration sessions, I'm assuming, because they included it with all the bonus stuff for Disintegration, but it was technically recorded for this Elektra compilation where the artist would cover older Elektra artists' songs. But I guess they didn't want Robert doing a folk song for it, so they did Hello, I Love You by The Doors. They kind of just recorded the really fast version as a joke, but Elektra still put it on there at the end as a finale track because the straight version of Hello, I Love You opens up the compilation. There's also John Eddy, some folk dude, covers In Between Days on it. So they got to be a current and older artist, if you will. So that was their nod to Elektra, trying to please the U.S. record label. For some reason, in the U.S. too, Japanese Whispers, the tape single for The Walk with the fly on it, and the Top album were all distributed through Sire Records, who was a sister label of Elektra. and starting back in 77 and would distribute more of the alternative bands throughout the 80s, like Soft Cell and Depeche Mode, The Smiths were all put out on Sire Records here in the U.S. Madonna and Pretenders would reign as their top artists, but for some reason it was only that album, the top, in Japanese Whispers compilation. So I don't know, for whatever reason they switched over to Sire for that one, but then back to Elektra. And not sure if there's more to it or what, but looks like for that brief moment Elektra just shifted over to Sire Records, because they were maybe trying to lump them in with the other alternative acts. And when it comes to the reissues, they're all credited to Fiction/Elektra, with the exception of the top, of course. And Rhino is the always the savior of reissues. So hopefully they can pick up and continue on with Wish throughout. Dare I bring it up? Every episode. Wish reissue should be out on Rhino. What's the holdup? But Rhino is rad. I feel like they are a good place to keep the Cure's legacy alive for the past albums and such. I think they really just distribute it. I don't know how much pull they really got, but it's just one of those names that I've seen throughout my life as a kid on cult, VHS tapes and stuff. All the weird shit was always put out on Rhino. So it's just cool as fuck. Probably the best label ever. I don't really want to look into their history too much. They probably got some shady shit like everybody else, and probably owned by Universal even, but who knows? But I gotta say, hopefully Fiction and Elektra and Universal, everyone could just let Rhino take over. So as we start to steer the boat towards home here and get back to where we are now and what the Cure is up to, like we said, there hasn't been any talk of being labelless or finding a label or anything. And in the few interviews we have got in relation to the new records, I'm sure they could have the pick of the litter. Like I said, no one's gonna fight Robert Smith on even just putting out a mediocre record at this point. I'm assuming there'd be tons of labels that would be more than happy to do that, but it does seem like the kind of thing that would hold a band up if they don't have it all finalized as of now. So that, like I said, does cause some concern. Hopefully they've gotten it all sorted out, though. Just put faith in them. And the ink is already dry, and who knows? Luckily, I think it all goes back to what Chris Perry initially saw in Robert, and that he is a super weird but super smart dude that knows how to keep charge of what he needs to and what to let the suits handle. And, he's a 62, almost 63-year-old man at this point, and has seen just about everything a record label could fucking throw at him, I'm sure. So he's always seemed overly fair with crediting his bandmates and songwriting and all the legalities and everything. So it seems to have a very respectable moral compass too. So hopefully he wouldn't sign some bullshit deal at this point, and hopefully he wouldn't be super stubborn about it either and hold out until, they agree to some ridiculous contract forcing the album to never come out. So, I am kind of surprised that they haven't gone the route of starting his own label, even just in name, like a Fiction was in a sense. Not so much for other bands even, but just something to put the Cure out under. Maybe he's smart enough to know that that's more hassle than it's worth, and it's easier just to sign some deal with somebody working under Universal, because he'd probably still end up under Universal somehow anyway. But a bit surprising. They have so much pull and always like to have total say, so you would think he could figure out a way where he could just put it out under some name. And you almost wonder, he does seem like he would love to put out a few other bands' stuff too. I'm sure he would love to put a Twilight Sad album out, so I'm a little surprised that he never got into that. I think he respects his private time, so doesn't need to get caught up in all the music business bullshit. Just stick to the art. So he's even a lot more smart than we're giving him credit for, even. So on that note, it'll be interesting to see what little logo pops up on Songs for a Lost World when it finally arrives. So as we wrap up, record labels aren't the funnest part to talk about. So thanks for bearing with me, but I hope it was somewhat educational, or if nothing else, an interesting glimpse into the business behind what's made all these albums come out in a home form over the years. A huge credit for researching all this stuff goes to the old 10 Imaginary Years book. And in a newer one, the Cure FAQ book put out by Christian Gerard last year really does do a good job of pulling all these sources together that we've stumbled across over the years, and check it out. So if you haven't yet, and thanks for letting me refresh my memory by reading up on label talk and stuff like that through those books. So I'd like to cite them. And a quick thank you and shout out to Chris Molly on the Facebook page for putting the bug back in my head about recording an episode on labels. So he asked, why not a fiction one? So hopefully this hit the spot. And thank you, Chris. But in conclusion, I hope you guys are doing good. We got the anniversary of Wish coming up. So woo! Get your party pants back on. Go get that tuxedo out of rental. Start blasting some Wish to mentally prepare for all the rehashing we're going to do of Wish. We've talked about that album a lot over the years. But 30th birthday. Can you believe it? Turning 30. All grown up. All right, be sure to subscribe on Apple and YouTube and anywhere that you can subscribe. Spotify, I guess. Can you subscribe over there? Sure, do that. And that way you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Holy Hour Podcast to see what's on the horizon. And we got a Facebook page that you can chime in over there in the comments section. So go on over to Facebook and like that page. And if you got some label stories you want to share of your band and horror stories of the label, are there ever good label stories? Oh, it worked out great. Yeah, they just got a lot of money. They're very fair. We got all our artistic freedom, and love my label. I don't know if that's possible, but I hope there are. I hope there's people out there that love their label from start to finish. We'll share the stories at Facebook, or you can drop me an email at gavinconnor@gmail.com. Anytime, any topic, just send it on over. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And until then, I hope you guys are doing good. We'll talk to you soon. We'll talk some Wish, important album for many. So we'll catch you then. And remember, talk hard.